Okay, so I just did some Twilight photography and I wanted to bring you guys in for a quick edit to kind of show you how I do it, maybe help you guys out if you're looking to do some Twilight editing, maybe get kind of some insight into how I do it so that you might be able to borrow some stuff and make some better photos. So today we're going to be looking at this guy here. This is our house that we shot a couple days ago at sunset. We are not going to be faking a sky in this one. We are going to be going for a little bit more of an overemphasized look on the warm colors, but something that is not incredibly fake. I think a lot of virtual Twilights out there, I can't stand them. I don't offer them at all unless somebody is requesting them and wants to pay for them. I refuse to do them because I think they look stupid. So I'm going to be doing a more real Twilight edit and just kind of walking you through what I do. So I did 5 brackets, 2 stops apart here. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and select my kind of my base photo that we're going to use, and I think this one's going to be good. If you look at it, we've got a lot of blown out highlights here. There's not going to be a way to recover a lot of that. We've got really dark stuff and the white balance is completely off. I do have a preset here and you can kind of get a see of, this is a little bit of what it looks like. White balance is still slightly off on this one, but this is kind of what it looks like. And we're going to refine this down to make sure a lot of those highlights, we bring in that detail, we bring in some more detail of those shadows and so on and so forth. So what we're going to do is I'm going to turn the exposure down just a bit. I also like to come to the tone curve and add in a medium filter, or a medium contrast. That's kind of how I like to start all of this. I also have a baseline sharpening preset, which I will come and show you real quick. It is a 68 on the amount, 1.4 on the radius, 15 on the detail, and 24 on the masking. Masking, you can see if you do this, if you're not familiar with it, you can hold Alt and drag the slider and it will show you everything in white will have sharpening applied, everything in black will not. The more you drag it, the more masking is applied to that sharpening. I usually like about 24 for this because I think it helps out with those details. This shot is slightly out of focus. It's not terrible. You can still see that it's nice in here on the address, but it is a little bit out of focus in certain areas over here. And that is just because I, in the field, did not recognize it. I took multiple photos. This one just happens to be slightly out of focus, but I'm going to show you it doesn't matter. At least for this one where you can salvage it, it's not terribly out of focus. It's just a little soft, and that's okay. So we're going to come in here and we are going to first adjust our white balance. We want something that, this is like very clean. I have this set to an automatic white balance and to keep to make colors white, basically, to make the warm colors white. It really helps in real estate when you're doing interiors, but for this shoot, it's kind of working against us. So we're going to go ahead and adjust this guy. I think, let's just click it up here, keep going. That's kind of clean. I do like that. Let's go a little bit more on it. I think we'll go right in here. Let's go 5,000. So of course we typed 500. Let's do 5,000. And then let's make it just a little bit like more amber color. It's a little too yellow for me. So let's add 10 on those magentas. And that makes it just a little more amber colored. So this is going to look good for our white balance and our color. I think the sky we're going to have to change a little bit. It's a little too blue, but we will get into that later. I usually don't mess with the contrast slider. It's a lot. It's kind of a hammer, and it just brings too much punch into it. So we're going to go ahead and adjust some of these. I usually like to start at like -65 on my highs and add like 55 on my shadows. That is my preference. That's kind of where I like it. You can see it kind of helps boost it a little bit. On the whites, we can see we don't have any clipping. Let's just kind of see if that helps us emphasize some stuff. I do like that. Let's do like 20 on the whites. And on these blacks, I don't want to go too far down to crush them. Let's do like a -8 on the blacks. And that looks pretty solid. We can pull this up on the before and after here. We can kind of see, yeah, we like that. We like that. We are also going to go make sure our lens corrections are turned on. I just noticed that. Back to our basics though. The texture, I am going to add about 15 texture to it. I don't like to add too much because it gets really overemphasizes noise and it can make it a little too crunchy, a little too detailed. Clarity will probably do 15 as well. Again, don't go too heavy on this. I think overall clarity can cause the image to just feel a little too contrasty. Dehaze, if you're going to use any of it, I know this isn't a hazy photo, but it can kind of help enhance and make it a little more clear. I like to be very subtle with it and do like a 5. You can see it darkens it a little bit. We're going to boost that up slightly. So we want a neutral exposure. This is our base image, so I'm kind of looking for that neutral exposure. I think something right about there. So maybe like a 0.04. Let's just do like a 0.05. Just because I like it when it's like nice even chunks between everything. And I think that looks good. We do have some blown out highlights right here and here and here, but we're going to bring that back in. We're also going to help those shadows out. So now that we have this image, we're going to hit Control-C to copy all of these settings, and we're going to go find an exposure that will help us with our darks and an exposure that will help us with our lights. So we're going to head over here to this darkest exposure, and you can see in this guy, we've got all the detail that we need in this, and I think this guy might be a perfect one. Let's go to this one and see. It's there, but I think this one's probably going to be better for what we're doing. Let's just paste it and see what happens. And we might need to boost that a little bit more. I think at the end, let's see what happens if we do it on this one. Okay, this one actually does look pretty good, so I think we'll use this one for our shadows. And this is going to be for the bright areas, not our shadows, excuse me. This is gonna be for our bright areas. So all we're really concerned about is these areas. Now there's nothing I can really do about these lights. They're just gonna blow out because they're gonna blow out. We're gonna increase this a little bit until we start to see a little too much detail. So I think right there is gonna be good. And this is gonna be for our brights. Now we need to go in and find something for our shadows. So this is going to be a real overblown image. I think this is going to be it, but we're going to pull it down just a hair. So we want this to be for our shadows. I'm kind of looking in here and like up here. I think this is pretty good. We don't really care about this or this area because there's not a whole lot we need there. I think this is going to work fine. So I'm going to put a rating on each of these so I know which ones I'm using. We'll come back in here. We're going to right click them, have them selected, and go edit in Photoshop, but we're going to use them as smart object layers, which is something that's been new in the recent months. You used to only be able to do them one at a time and then had to like manually sort them. This will allow us to do it as layers in one Photoshop file. It's better than doing it as layers because it is non-destructive, meaning I can come back in and I can edit some things, which I will show you why. I don't really mind having it being destructive, but for what I'm doing, and I'm going to need to edit this sky, I'm going to leave it this way because it's going to help us out. So let's bump in there and let's get it done. Now we are going to be using something called luminosity masking and exposure blending. There are many ways to do this. Some people prefer to use HDR software. Some people prefer just to do it all in Lightroom. Excuse me. And I am not of that mindset. I have tried to do that. I don't think it looks as good. I think I can get a lot more control and a lot more finesse this way. We will be using 2 paid-for extensions or plugins for Photoshop. The first is going to be Raya Pro. A lot of people like to use Lumenzia, especially in the real estate scene. I learned on Raya Pro years and years ago. I purchased it, and he continues to update it, and I don't have to pay anything for it, for the updates anyway. And it just works for me. I've tried Lumenzia. I think Lumenzia is super clunky. I think that the way they have it laid out does not work for my brain. But again, if it works for you, please check it out. There are tons of tutorials on it. But I use Raya Pro, and we're also going to be using the Nik collection and specifically color effects. I highly recommend getting this. It's great for all kinds of photography. It has wonderful contrast and color science, and there's so many brilliant plugins with it that I'm so happy DxO picked it up and started developing for it from when Google killed it, and it has been a huge boon to what I do. So we have all these in here. We're going to go ahead and label them. This is going to be our base exposure, so I'm just going to go ahead and relabel that. This guy is going to be our for our highlights, so I'm going to call it highs. And this guy is going to be for our shadows, so I'm going to call it lows. We're going to drag that base down, drag the highs here because this is kind of the order that I work. I do the highlights first, then I do the shadows. You can do either one, whatever works for your brain. This one works for me. So we're going to come in here, turn those off, go to our base, and then I have instant mask already out here. It can be found up here in I believe, is it plugins? Yeah, under the plugins, Raya Pro 6, and then you can pull these out. I just have it already out, ready to go. Click on that instant mask and you're gonna see we have this nice layout, and I'm gonna focus on this area here and this area. We usually don't touch this, but this is a shadows, midtones, and highlights to kind of refine your masks. And then this is brights, darks, and midtones, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. The higher the number, the more refined the mask will be for your selection. So we're gonna do brights. I tend to stick with the brights 2 because it usually is right on the money. So we're gonna hit brights 2 and see what it looks like. And that is pretty dang close. I think it's a little too contrasty, so we're gonna play with these. This will increase the shadows, which I don't wanna do. I'd like to increase those mid-tones just to get a little bit better of a blend. That looks pretty good to me. Everything that's in white will be selected here. Everything that is in black will not be, and all the grays will be a varying shade. And so we're gonna take this and grab this mask and drag it to our highs. We'll turn it back on, and that doesn't look that bad. We did a pretty good job with the midtones. To be completely honest, that looks really, really good. But I think we can do it just a little bit better, make it a little bit more subtle, and we will go ahead and go and click on it, and we are going to hold Shift and hit the folder button, and it's going to make that into a group. We will then hold the Alt key and click Mask, and that will mask it off. I then am going to go to my brush, and I have an opacity of 30 and a flow of 15. You can vary these. If you had like an opacity of 50 and a flow of 25, it would refine a lot faster. I like to have a little bit more subtle of an effect, so we can come in and paint that in. So now we're just going to go ahead and paint with a nice soft 0 hardness brush, and just kind of paint in where we'd like that detail to come in. You can see that it gets refined and comes in beautifully. So I don't want to take too much of it away. We'll paint a little bit more heavy here, paint a little heavier there. Come up in here, paint this in. Now there's not a lot I can do about this highlight. It is pretty blown out. What we could do, and I will go show you here in a second, just kind of paint some of this in, get some of that stonework. Paint a little bit more there. Okay, you can see we've got it pretty well, right? That's our before and after. But right here we're struggling a little bit, so this is where having these raw files is good. So I'm gonna double click on this smart object, and it's gonna open it up in Camera Raw. Now you can see in here, that is real blown out. So I'm going to do is I'm going to click on my masking tool. I'm going to grab me a radial gradient with a 100% feather, and we're just going to drag it out over that area right here. And we're going to kind of adjust it and see what happens. So let's pull our highs and see if that. So that's really not going to work. This photo, unfortunately, is a little bit too blown out, and this is why I was telling you that it might be better to have our other one in here. But for the purposes of this, we're going to go with it. If I wanted to fix this, what I could do is I could come back here into Photoshop, can grab this guy, and I could say, okay, this guy is a little bit better for my highs, because as you can see right here, we're getting that perfect detail in there. Kind of boost it up a little bit till it starts to get to a little too much for us right about there. Right click it, say edit in Photoshop as a smart object, and it's going to pull it into Photoshop on its own project. And we're going to label this highs 2, just so we don't have any naming conflicts. We'll drag it in here, drop it, grab it. We're going to move it up so I can align it real quick. There is a quicker way to do that, but we'll just do that guy right there. And what we're going to do is I'm going to take this layer mask on this guy, and I'm just going to drop this guy in here, grab the layer mask, put him on there, turn that off, and you can see now we've got our refined layer mask in there, and we have that detail that we wanted in the first place. If I wanted to bring a little bit more in, I could take this and kind of brush a little bit more just to kind of be a little bit happier with it. And there we go. We fixed it just like that. All those blown out highlights are nice and subtle. They still look really nice, but there is a ton of detail in there. So that guy's gonna be good. I'm just gonna get rid of that highest layer with delete, and we're gonna call it good. So now, deselect all my layers by just clicking in this area down here. I'm gonna go to Instant Mask and we're gonna hit Darks 2. Now this will be an inverse image, so again, we're selecting the darks. So everything in white is going to be the dark parts of the image that we're selecting. So we can brighten them up, lift them a little bit. All the bright areas will be black so that we can not affect them in any way. And again, everything gray is going to be an in-between section. So we're gonna take this guy, I think it's fine, drop it on our lows, turn it back on, and that looks real flat. So I would say that if you really want to, there's a couple ways you can fix this. Like I said, we're gonna go in and refine it, so we'll hit that shift on the folder to group it. We will click the mask button and put it on here. If we wanted to, you can disable that layer mask and you could just mess with the opacity if you really wanted to. And like this is a quick way to do it. You can see that like that brings it in pretty good, or about 46% opacity, and it affects the whole image. But this is quite honestly pretty close to what an architecture shoot would want. It's very neutral, it's very flat. The sky does not have a ton of saturation. The whole image doesn't, but it stands out. It's very subtle, and this would be something I would be happy to deliver to a custom builder client, something like that. I do a little bit more refinement, but for the purposes of this, we're gonna go a little bit further. This is for real estate, and I kind of wanna just sweeten it a little bit. So we're gonna put that mask back on, make sure we turn that opacity to 100, and we're just gonna come in here and paint in the areas so we can emphasize them just a little bit more. Paint this in so we can see that address real nice, kind of get some of these shadows not as dark, just like that. I'm not gonna worry about the neighbor's house because that's not what we are here shooting. There we go. And you can see that brings it in. Brings a lot of detail into it. I'm not worried about the sky. We are gonna go fix that right now though. So we have all of our groups here. You can label them if you want. I'm gonna get rid of my instant mask just because it feels better to me. And we're gonna double click on our base exposure and we're gonna mess with that sky a little bit. So we're gonna come in here and we are going to click on this masking guy, and we're gonna click mask the sky. Now, we have our sky all masked out. We're gonna click on our light. Actually, we're gonna click on our color first. Let's adjust this a little bit. It's a little blue for my taste. You see how that sky just starts to look more natural? I really like that. That's about a 38 onto the warmth. We're gonna come back to the light. We're gonna take this contrast and we're just gonna bump it up, maybe push our brightness a little bit, just keep cranking that contrast in to give some draw to that sky. We're gonna not mess too much with the color. I think I will put a 5 saturation on it just to give a little bit of a bump to it, but we will come back to the sky in our Nik Effects and kind of mess with that. So let's go ahead and hit OK, and we will see that come in, and boom, there we go. That is a gorgeous image. So we are going to come in here, and now I am done with all this. This is where, if you want to retain and have a large file size, you could 100%, I'm gonna close this guy. You can 100% just go Alt-Control-Shift-E and make a new layer on top so that you are only affecting that top layer. That's gonna take everything from below and make it into one layer so you don't have those individual layers because we have all these masks. I am going to flatten this image. You can come up here and go to Layer, Flatten Image, or you can be like me, record a macro and have it bound to a key and hit F4 and it's already flattened. We're gonna come into our filters now, go to Nik Collection, Color Effects 6, Nik 6 Color Effects, whatever you wanna call it. And now I have a pre-built one, but I'm gonna go ahead and build another one with you to show you. So the first thing I like to do is take this clear view. Let's drop it at like a 10. One thing to know about color effects is they are pretty heavy. So 10 looks pretty good to me. That's just gonna bring in a little bit of detail. You can kind of see the subtleness of that detail. It brings in more contrast. Next thing we're gonna do is go to Brilliance and Warmth. I have these already favorited because they're the ones I use the most. So we're gonna add that Brilliance and Warmth. It doesn't do anything when it comes in. It does not have a preset on it. It's gonna have a saturation, warmth, and a perceptual saturation slider. The perceptual saturation slider can get kinda goofy. It makes things really candy colored. I don't like using it. There's very specific instances where I will take it and I'll put it at like, say 18, and then I will desaturate the rest of the image so that it kind of gives you that more light color, almost, not really film, but it kind of just makes the colors less punchy, but they still pop. I hate that word, but the colors still stand out. I don't like it in this scenario, so we're just gonna go ahead and reset all of that. Now, the saturation I'm gonna leave where it's at, but I'm gonna adjust this warmth slider. I wanna make it a little bit warmer. See how that does that nice warmth? It does add some magenta to the sky, which we can go back and correct later. I think we'll leave that at about, let's do 38, maybe 35. Let's try 35. 35's all right, let's do that. So you can kind of see there's what it does. It adds some warmth, it adds some magenta to it. It just makes the image a little bit more bright and pleasing. And we're gonna leave it right there. I'm not gonna do anything else to that. Next thing I'm gonna go do is I'm gonna scroll down on my filters and I'm going to look for Pro Contrast. Pro Contrast is a great way to add a lot. I like the dynamic contrast slider in it and the color casting slider. So the correct contrast can kind of help you add some more contrast to it, but this is taking away from what we did. So I'm going to check this color slider. It does take away some of that magenta hue to it and keep it a little bit warm. I think we're gonna leave it for now, and we're gonna go to that dynamic contrast, and this is where the magic kind of happens. It tends to add contrast in a way that does not darken or lighten the image too much, but kind of just adds it where it needs to be. It uses that special sauce. I'm gonna add it at about a 10. You can kind of see, makes it a little bit brighter, adds it in the dark areas, but doesn't really affect too many of these highlights, which is perfect. Next, we're gonna come in and I'm gonna grab my skylight filter. Now this is gonna come in with a preset of 20%. It is very heavy and we will adjust it. So you'll see, holy moly, it comes in too hot. But I like the skylight filter because again, it is for a sunset and it just has a way of making it feel nice and warm and just gives it that glow that I like. Right at about an 8 is where I'm gonna leave that. I think that looks really good. Again, the sky has a little bit of a pink tint to it, which we can take out after this, and I will show you how to do that. Finally, what we are going to do is we are going to add a darken, lighten center, which is basically a fancy way to vignette this. I like it because it gives me the control. It has two separate kinds of vignettes, as you'll see, and I really enjoy it. So we'll hit it. It's going to be a little heavy. It does have a preset on it. I like to change the shape to 2. It tends to be a little bit nicer, a little more oblong. Now, I tend to adjust, like, let's see what our center size is so I can kind of see where it is. I'm going to make it just a little bit bigger. 80, let's do 75. That border luminosity is a little heavy. Let's kind of adjust it out. Maybe right there. -32 is good. And I think probably there on the 30, you can see there's what it does. I like that. It kind of brings us in, makes us look straight at the home. And we're just going to hit apply. That's going to apply everything to it. If you did keep a smart object in here, which I can show you how to do all of this on a smart object and still keep it. You can think of smart objects as almost like folders, but we didn't. It's going to apply it and duplicate it on our layers. If it was a smart object, it would apply it as smart filters, and you could go and edit it. So one thing I don't like about this is the sky just has a little bit too much pink in it. So we're going to go ahead and hit Control Shift A. And that's going to open it. I am on a Windows computer. That is going to open it back in Camera Raw. Going to select a mask, select my sky. Since I already flattened it, I don't have the previous selection, but that is all right. We're not doing anything crazy. We're just going to drag this tint slider a little to the left. I'm also going to, let's go to the effects and let's see what clarity does for us. Does that bring it in just a little bit? It does. It kind of darkens it on that right-hand side. So I'm gonna bring it to 16, but we're gonna go back to this, create a new mask, radial gradient, nice, very, very feathered, 100%. Go to our light and just kind of bump that up. Maybe drag it over here more. Just like that. There's what we want. Now we can kind of see what that does. That just makes it nice and bright. It's actually a little bit much for me. I think we'll pull that down a little bit. It was sunset. And there we go. Hit OK. Bring that in. It's going to fix our sky. And now, while I was in Camera Raw, I should have done this, but I will do it again. So we're going to correct the perspective. I like to do it in Photoshop because I find it to be a little bit much on Lightroom. Lightroom tends to be, it just doesn't perform the way that Photoshop does. And that is my personal preference. If you like it there, but I'll show you what I mean. So we're going to open this again, Control Shift A, take it into Camera Raw. we're going to go to the little crop tool here, which is geometry, and we're going to go to a guided geometry. Now, if you hold Alt while you're in this guided one, it's going to magnify your point and it's going to make it super fine adjustments, which is why I like it here. It tends to not perform really well in Photoshop. Take it and we're going to find some lines we want to be straight up and down. Try and find them at the edges of the image. When you're at the edges of the image is where most of your distortion is going to be. And so there we go. Drag this down. Make sure we don't go too far out. We can get that rain gutter. We want to try and find it right there. And there you go. That brings it up, makes those lines nice and straight. We don't want to do a horizontal on this one because we are at a 2-point perspective. We are off angle of it and it will try and bring it flat and make everything like we're straight on. We don't want that. We want that nice horizon line, that roof line to be nice and angular and just kind of that hero shot. So we'll hit OK. And there we are. I'm going to hit F4 to flatten it because it just makes it faster for saving. And I'm going to go ahead and save it. And we will go back to Photoshop, kind of give you a back and forth here. And when we go here, you can see this is our final image. And this was our starter. And I'll go ahead and reset that so you can kind of get that dramatic perspective, right? So here's where we started. Here's where we ended up. And for me, this is a great image. There's a lot of detail still in here. It's bright, but you can still see all these bricks. Yeah, we've got some blown out stuff on these lights, but we don't really want to see the light bulbs. You could fix that by having more exposures, like 7 or 9, and doing them one stop apart. That way you could come in and get really, really granular and particular about it. But since this is an image for real estate, this is not an architect's portfolio. This is not supposed to be something for a custom home builder. I'm fine with it. And I think that this really makes it stand out, makes it look nice and airy and beautiful. It keeps those whites from being just perfectly pure white. And it really gives a warm sense of home. And again, it'll load up. Boom. There it is. Great image. So if you guys have any questions, if you want to see some more, if you have images you would like to see edited, please let me know. I plan on doing a lot more editing. I'm going to go through my interiors for you. I just don't have one at the moment that I am ready to show off. I haven't had as many shoots to the start of this year. The market hasn't taken off as much yet, and a lot of mine have just been pretty much like rentals and things like that. So once we get a really, really nice interior, I will go over how I do it. There'll be some tutorials on like how I shot it, all that good stuff. So I appreciate you guys sticking around and watching. I hope that was helpful. Let me know in the comments below if there's something you'd like to see. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you on the next one.